Hello everyone, just Goran here and welcome back to another Planet Zoo real life inspiration video, and today we are looking at the Eurasian lynx, including the Northern lynx and the Carpathian lynx, which most zoos just list as Eurasian lynxes anyway, and we'll also look at the Canada lynx and the bobcat, just for completion's sake. So let's jump into things, starting with Zo'n Erlebniswelt, one of my favorite habitats, which is why I pulled it towards the front. I pulled all the habitats that kind of stood out to me to the front of the video a little bit because a lot of it is very similar. But yeah, here at Zo'n Erlebniswelt you can see this really cool kind of hot wire reeds fence in the water separating the visitors from the lynxes, which are on their little island habitat type of area. And what also is really cool about Zo'n Erlebniswelt is the theming of the Alaska area that we are in, this being the first habitat that you see as you enter the Alaska area. And yeah, here's some of that theming is already present with this little hut over here, this log cabin, and we can see some moose antlers, we can see some windows also overlooking the enclosure, and the entire hut over here is actually all decorated with a bed, with some shelves and cabinets, all sorts of details that you can look at. Looking through the window, we get another closer view of the habitat. You can't see it in the footage, but the lynx was actually sleeping under the window there, which was pretty cool. But yeah, you get some really great views there. And then as you continue to trail, there is this little elevated observation tower, which is mostly for kids to play with. You don't even get that much of a view of the enclosure from here, which is a little bit strange. Yeah, I really don't know what the idea is there. But yeah, there is a much better view over here through the glass, which this lynx was also sleeping next to. Although the windows are very square-ish, which is an issue that at Zo'n Erlebniswelt has, to be honest. A lot of their exhibits have glass just like that. But yeah, cool faux rock door, and then as you exit the Alaska area over here, you actually come by the exhibit again, because it is near the entrance/exit, so here you see more of that cool hot wire reeds. This year I also got a really cool shot of the lynx sitting over there, kind of in between the bushes and along this tree. Just really cool stuff. I really like this enclosure. I think it's really well made, especially this mode kind of situation is just really, really cool and unique. Next up, we have the Zoo of Dortmund, which when I visited the zoo, there were actually no lynxes in this enclosure. I'm not sure if they've gotten any at this point, but I was just stunned by how beautiful this little forest landscape over here is. And yeah, it's just a fence around it. It's very similar to a lot of the lynx enclosures that we will be seeing, to be honest. This one just stood out to me because it's such a beautiful bit of landscape, just with this kind of valley type of setting. I'm really bad at geography terms in English. I don't know how to describe this, but yeah, just look at that. It's so gorgeous. It's amazing. And it's really spacious, and it's just really, really good. And you get views from it from both sides. Like this viewing area we're at right now is at the opposite end of the valley as the other one we were just at was. So yeah, 10 out of 10. Great stuff. Next up at the Zoo of Duisburg, we have another cool little log cabin over here. Not as decorated on the inside, it's definitely a viewing area first and foremost. On the left side is a habitat for the European wildcat, and then on the other side over here is the lynx enclosure. So you've got both of the kind of two European wildcats there. Cool stuff as well. Sometimes you might see the lynx walking around in there. There are more views into this enclosure, and I should probably say enclosures, because as you can see over here, there's one window on the left which is going into the same habitat we saw from the log cabin, and then on the right over here is another enclosure for them as well. So they got 2 yards that they can use to separate the lynxes if need be. So, and yeah, if you go all the way around, again, yeah, there is another window into the second yard from the other side as well. So yeah, really cool stuff, but that's it for Duisburg. Let's move on to GaiaZoo, which also have just a beautiful habitat with a pretty interesting layout, especially in the other enclosure. We start off with a pretty simple one, just a nice grassy, quite open enclosure, but still with some nice plants and bushes. Lynx sitting over there on the left, and as you pass this enclosure, you go through this cool kind of walkway, which is mostly for the Barbary macaque on the right, and until you get to this building, which is the indoor area for the lynx, and you actually get a nice window into that. So you get a really cool view of the lynx indoor. The first time I was at this zoo, actually, the lynx was sitting right here on the edge. So that was really, really cool. Never really gotten that close to a lynx ever since, I don't think, at least. Anyway, you can actually go on top of this little indoor area and get a top-down view into the enclosure we just saw. We can see there's actually a little pond in the middle there. And the other enclosure on the right over here, nice scratching post in the middle there, but a lot more foliage. And what's really cool here is there's this tortoise enclosure, which kind of overlooks the lynx enclosure. And you got some closer views into it as well. As we go outside, there is this wall, which is nice and wooden and rustic as well, looking into this part of the enclosure. And there on the left, you can see that tortoise enclosure and this steep wall preventing the lynxes from climbing into that. There's also some hot wire at the bottom, actually. Next up at the Zoo of Nürnberg, we got a really interesting lynx enclosure. We start off over here at the top, which is how I first approached the enclosure. So we got a top-down view into it. The platform that we're on being kind of an overhang, so of course the lynxes can't really climb up to it. There's also a hot wire going along the side of it. But yeah, as we move to the side here, we also get a glass view, which isn't the best. The best views come over here at the bottom, and you can see these steep rock walls covered in hot wire to prevent the lynxes from being able to climb out, I'm pretty sure. It's just such a unique view, and the fact that it's completely open and this rock wall is actually the containing barrier of the enclosure, as far as I could tell, is pretty special. That's not something you would expect. You'd really think this back wall would open up all sorts of security risks and escape risks, but apparently it all goes well. Then on the right over here is a little backstage building, I'm pretty sure, but it also doubles as a little souvenir shop from what I can tell. And then next up we have the Zoo of Magdeburg, and this is a bit more of a simpler enclosure, although if you know me, you might know why I like this one and why it stood out to me. It's a sloping up enclosure, and I'm also a really big fan of those. It's a bit on the small side. I would like to see it a bit bigger, but I do like what it probably used to be a bit of a waterfall feature. And then there's some height in the back. There's lots of foliage around as well for the lynx to hide in. So I really had to search for a bit before I actually spotted it right in between all of the bushes, which was just a really cool thing to do. Next up at the Zoo of Olomouc, we have a lynx enclosure next to a car. There was like an advertisement of a car in the middle of the zoo, which actually, this isn't the only car I saw being advertised in the Czech Republic, which was pretty interesting. But yeah, here's just a nice thick foliage enclosure. I didn't even see the lynx here. I reckon it was hiding somewhere amongst all these bushes, but I don't think that's a bad thing at all. It was a nice and beautiful enclosure that you could view from the top. Next up we have the domain of the Caves of Hun, which actually has several lynx yards over here in this little corner of the zoo, and this one in particular is not that special. This is very much a standard lynx enclosure, which we'll see many more of throughout this video. Just a little fence around an area with some perches in it, but it's over here to the left that really stood out to me as being really cool. As we come up to this little viewing area over here, you can see this beautiful kind of rockwork, natural rock landscape in the back, full of bushes and trees, and it's just really awesome looking, and a very nice spacious exhibit as well. The posts of the fence over here are actual wooden posts, making it look nice and rustic and beautiful and natural as well. I was just a really big fan of this one, and then there's two more yards right beside it that are very average. But yeah, really cool exhibit from the Caves of Hun right there. Then next up we have Eindhoven Zoo, and when I visited this zoo last week, I actually noticed they have some new signs over here in their new house style from switching over from Dierenrijk to Eindhoven Zoo. The signs were a little bit difficult to close, but they had some fun lynx information. Over here is the lynx exhibit, however, a nice netted over exhibit where the nets are being held up by these natural logs, which is a pretty cool look. The enclosure itself hasn't really changed much since becoming Eindhoven Zoo, besides a bit more extra signage, and the fence that we're standing in front of actually all used to be these like rope fences that are around the rest of the enclosure, but the main viewing area has received a bit of an upgrade in that regard. There is this cool this cool log that this lynx is sleeping in when I was here last time. And actually, when I was here the time before that, the lynx was also sleeping in there, which is what this footage is from. So that's definitely a favorite spot of theirs, which is really cool. In the past, you could actually walk around the entire enclosure, as I'm doing over here. This is older footage. This was blocked off at the moment. The sign said due to construction. I'm not sure if that's going to be changed again, or if that was due to the construction of the new tuck-in enclosure of the zoo. But yeah, you used to be able to see especially this second enclosure over here from the side, but nowadays you can only see it from this front area over here. So you get less opportunities to see the lynxes, although I had no trouble doing so. I saw them actually quite a bit. But yeah, that's one of the only netted over enclosures actually, so that's quite interesting. Surprisingly, still a lynx actually managed to escape from here like this year, so that's interesting. But yeah, we are already moving on to Zoo Osnabrück, where we are on this elevated bridge in the one of the North America sections, and from this elevated bridge we actually get a pretty good chance to see the lynx like hiding up in the trees. We can also see some of the trees are actually blocked off, especially the trees close to the fence, and we can see some of the fence actually constructed, or at least covered up with some logs, giving it a nice natural look, but not the entire way around, only stuff close to this part of the visitor area. Over here is a nice fenced off wall, giving the lynxes a bit more privacy, but still having some glass viewing areas into the enclosure, which you can see is actually quite spacious. There's a lot going on. There's some nice ground cover. It's a really cool looking enclosure. Over here is also a little bit of a sheltered viewing area with a nice window where you can look into the entire length of the enclosure from here. And that's it for Zoo Osnabrück. So let's move on to Bio-Topia Dunkerque, the Zoo of Dunkirk. And here you can see actually they signed their lynx as a Carpathian lynx. This is one of the only zoos that I've seen not just call it the Eurasian lynx. You can also see this viewing area is like a bee insect hotel, which is pretty cool. But the habitat itself is quite bland. There's 2 trees that have been planted into it, but yeah, it's very open. This is a very Planet Zoo exhibit, I want to say, because as you get to this viewing area over here, we can see this very Planet Zoo looking faux log. We can see these very straight waterfalls. This feels like something that would have been built in Planet Zoo, which I think is pretty funny. It's a nice view. It would be really cool to see a lynx walk over that faux log, but it does not look very naturalistic or anything like that. It's definitely an interesting habitat. It stood out to me in that sense, but it's not one of the best ones in my opinion. But yeah, that's it for Dunkirk. Let's move to Dierenpark Hoenderdaell, which is starting to get into this territory of the standard lynx exhibit. This one stood out to me though because it's very spacious. When I was here they just had some cubs, I'm pretty sure, which is why they weren't mowing the lawn and the grass was really high, which I actually really liked. I thought it looked really cool, especially because it was a very windy day, so all the wind was like blowing all the grass and all the way. It was cool. But yeah, they have a very tall, large enclosure, as you can see, with lots of space. It's great. You can also see it from the other side through like yeah, more mesh, and here you can really see the wind like blowing all the grass and stuff. Cool stuff, nice big enclosure. Over here at Tiergehegen Kaisergarten, I guess the enclosure itself didn't stand out to me that much. Was more the experience that I had over here with the lynxes, which were very active, because especially in the evening when I was almost getting ready to leave the zoo because the sun was starting to set, which was just really beautiful in the background, by the way. But yeah, the lynx had just received some food over here, so they were very active, and I had a very good time checking them out and kind of following them around the enclosure, which is still quite nice and spacious. There are some trees, there are some hills in here. The landscape's pretty nicely made interesting. But yeah, as you can see over here, this enclosure actually does hold 3 lynxes, very, very clearly shown over here. And yeah, it was just really cool to see them walking around with this what is it, a rabbit? Yeah, they definitely had a good time. And I just realized I lied to you earlier in the video, and you'll see why in a bit. Because as we're walking up to this final viewing area, you can see you can get really close up to the fence here. So I'm always very happy with that, because it allows me to stick my camera through and get some very nice footage without the mesh in the way. But I understand why most zoos don't let you do this. There is some hot wire here to protect you, but things can happen. There were kids actually like sticking their heads through the mesh as well, which if a lynx does that, it's definitely not something you want. But yeah, let's get into the rest of the enclosures, starting with Aachener Tierpark, where we can see again we have a very tall mesh fence, but a really cool enclosure behind it. I quite like this one as well, especially for Aachener Tierpark, which is a bit of a smaller zoo. This is actually a really sizable enclosure, and even better, it's a very long enclosure. So there's a very long perimeter, which is great because cats like to pace around the perimeter of the enclosure, so this gives them a much longer path to walk around, which, yeah, keeps them moving, keeps them more engaged. It's a bit more interesting for them. As you can see, the trees are blocked off by some spiky things, so they can't climb into those. But something I like is that there's a nice mix of deciduous and evergreen trees, as you can see over here. Some trees retaining their needles and things, making sure there is still some cover for the lynxes to hide in during the winter months that I was here. So that's really cool to see. And it's especially important since you can also walk around the top part of this enclosure, so you can basically walk all the way around it, so the animals can be viewed from all sides. So it's nice that they do have some more lush spaces to hide in, so they don't go crazy from always having eyes on them. So yeah, pretty nice enclosure over here at the Aachener Tierpark, and yeah, I had some fun following the lynxes around over here. But now it's time to move to Anholter Schweiz, which is a German BiotopWildpark, as they call it. It's a Wildpark zoo that has all sorts of European animals, and the lynx habitat over here is again just a simple mesh fence around a nice bit of nature, with a couple of perches and things like that. It's quite nice and spacious. As you can see over here, there's quite a lot of space for them to move around, which is really good to see. My favorite part of this enclosure, however, is as we keep following this, yeah, nice little hill, stuff like that, we get to this viewing area over here with a bit of a moat sort of situation. And what I like here is there is this pulley system that the keepers can attach food to, and like use the pulley system to get it up to that elevated spot over there very easily. So probably every time these animals are fed, they're gonna hang something up there, which is a really nice bit of enrichment for the lynxes over here. In the back there you can also see the indoor area, and as we go inside, it's a very standard thing for Anholter Schweiz. If you've seen an Anholter Schweiz habitat in these videos before, you probably recognize this style of indoor habitat, but they're always cool to see regardless. Next up we have Parc Animalier de Bouillon, where we have this pretty small lynx habitat. We have one lynx over here, and then in the next habitat over there will be two more, so they got 3 lynxes in a pretty small footprint. It's not horrible, it's below average from what I have seen, I would say. And sadly, it's not the worst enclosure in the video. You'll definitely know when we get to that one. But yeah, over here you can see the kind of separation area which leads into the backstage. There's also a connection point with the other enclosure, and here is the indoor area. It's not great. It's not very spacious. Over here at the Zoo Chorzów in Poland, we have a pretty modern looking enclosure. Lots of tall grasses and stuff. I really do like the inside of the enclosure. The outside is again just a very simple mesh, although this one looks very clean and relatively new. On the other corner over here is another glass viewing area as well, so it gives you a good view into the enclosure once again. And as we move past these education signs, we can actually go up this building over here, although on the back is another yard. I'm not sure if this one is for the lynxes or if it's for wolverine, which are on the other side of this building as well, like in the habitat behind this one. But yeah, over here in the front, these are definitely the lynx habitats. Actually 2 yards for them once again, and we can see a lynx walking in the back of this second enclosure over here. So next up we have Tierpark Dessau, which has a relatively small enclosure, although I like the furnishings of it. There's some nice natural elements, lots of bushes, and the lynx was walking around, climbing around in here a little bit. There's a indoor-ish sheltered viewing area to the left as well, which you could see the window of a second ago. Actually, you can see the lynx standing right in front of it over there, but sadly once I went in, I don't think he was there anymore. But yeah, this gives you another view of the enclosure from there. So yeah, that's it for Dessau. Next up we have Zoo Dvorec in the Czech Republic. And yeah, hopefully I don't have to point out that this is by far the worst habitat in the video. This is it. This is absolutely tiny. It's not, there's no elevation to it. There's like little to no climbing opportunities. I can't believe that this is a lynx habitat, and it makes me very, very sad. And I want to move on to the next zoo, which is Zoo Hubloka, where I actually missed the lynx enclosure. I was filming the wolf enclosure over here, and over there in the corner you could actually see where the lynx habitat would be. It's to the left here, but I guess I just skipped over it. I had no idea it was there. It's very hidden. It's quite small as well. Here's a picture I found on the Facebook channel of the group, and in the winter you can kind of see the whole enclosure like that. In the summer it is a bit more lush and covered up. But yeah, it's also not very small, but it's not horrible, so I don't know. And then also in the Czech Republic over here, Zoo Hodonín, also not great, but not as bad as Dvorec. But yeah, not great. Again, not a lot of elevation, although here they do have some climbing opportunities, and they were actually kind of perched up into something. But yeah, I wasn't a big fan of this zoo either. And this is a pretty good indication as to why, I guess. Next up we have Kasteelpark Born in the Netherlands. Again, another pretty simple like mesh fence habitat with a nice perch in there. I was here in the winter, so maybe in the summer it looks a bit nicer. There are some bushes here and there. Something interesting about this enclosure is that this is actually a zoo you can bring your dog into, but there are signs leading up to this enclosure telling you can't go here with your dogs to prevent the lynxes from getting stressed by the presence of dogs, which I think is a really good thing. I hope people listen to that, because that's one of the reasons I don't like zoos that allow dogs in them, because of the effects on the other animals. So it's cool that the zoo kind of does take that into account and tries to prevent stress to the lynxes at least. Next up we have Wildpark Reuschenberg, where we have several lynx enclosures kind of connected up to one another. This one over here isn't super interesting. It's a very square box. We have some separation area over there, which is actually meshed over the top as well. And there's a tree kind of standing in the middle there. And we can see a lynx running around in here actually, where we have a nice little log cabin backstage shelter building for them, which is pretty cool, I guess. And as we continue walking over here past this meshed over thing, we got another habitat right here for them, with the lynx running around in the background. So yeah, they got kind of two larger yards with the meshed over stuff in the middle connecting everything. Sorry, I hit my microphone. And yeah, you can kind of walk all the way along the sides of these ones, not all the way around them, but maybe in the background you can see something in the sky. What is it? Yeah, there's actually an elevated walking path through the trees here, and from there you can kind of see the habitat from up above, which is down there, so that's pretty interesting right there. Next up we have Natuurhulpcentrum Opglabbeek. This is a rescue for all sorts of animals, and over here this is the cage that the rescued lynx is housed in, and it was perching up on the top kind of balusters sort of area. So yeah, not amazing, but it's a rescue. They make do with what they got, basically. So yeah, that's it for Opglabbeek. Next up we have the Zoo of Rostock, which has another very similar enclosure. I'm running out of things to say about all of these similar looking enclosures, but yeah, we got another mesh fence with the anti-climbing overhang. We got a nice leafy forest floor, a little pond. The trees are protected so they can't be climbed. And yeah, you can get up to the mesh over here. Well, not all the way up to it. And as you're walking around the main pathway, you can see the enclosure to your right. And there is another kind of outcropping into the second enclosure over here. So the enclosures have a connection between them. And the lynx was kind of hiding. Well, it wasn't hiding that much. I didn't see it. Then Pacha pointed out to me that it was just lying there in the bushes. I'm pretty sure, like, in between the log, but I didn't get a good shot of it with my camera. So next up we have the Zoo of Tabor, I don't know how to pronounce that. Another Czech zoo, which, yeah, just a mesh fence around a nice bit of nature. I do like the bit of nature that this fence has been put around. My main complaint with this one is just the several layers of mesh, which is there to protect fingers. I get it, because you can get all the way up to this one. But yeah, it's a nice enclosure still. I just need to stop touching my mic, damn. Let's move to Tiergarten Schönbrunn, which has a nice lynx habitat over here, kind of in the forest hill section of the zoo, which is not really the classical city zoo part of the zoo, if that makes sense. I like the way that these fences are built up out of wooden logs, nice natural look to them. But yeah, you don't get very great views of the animals in this one. That kind of outcropping we were just standing on, that dock type thing, was basically the only viewing area, and the rest of the enclosures is kind of off to the side of the path. So yeah, I don't know, I wasn't a huge fan of that one. Next up we have Wildpark Reuschenberg in Germany. This is somewhere near Cologne, and yeah, it's a mesh cage. It's a big old mesh cage, actually several big old mesh cages. Nice planting in there, I suppose. You can get a good look at the lynxes as they're walking around in here. It's not terrible. That's the second time in this video a lynx got mad at me. But yeah, as we go around the back, you can see there is a third of these cages kind of behind the second one we were just looking at. So they do have quite a bit of space, and this entire third cage is completely blocked off from the public, so they also have a place to retreat from people, which is good. Over here at the Zonnegloed, we start off with a little backstage view into the lynx backstage over here, and then we move to the enclosures off to the side. Here you do also see the doors into the backstage for the keepers, and then yeah, the enclosure right over there. It's a nice and spacious enclosure. They got 2 of these as well, and for being a rescue, they actually do have some nice viewing areas over here with the glass as well, which makes sense that the enclosures are a little bit more attractive to the guests, since the Zonnegloed is open year-round, whereas another rescue, like Natuurhulpcentrum Opglabbeek we saw earlier, is only open a few days a year on like special days to show the work that they're doing. So over here you can see there is a second viewing area, just like the other one, for the other enclosure. And just like the other enclosure in the back, you can see kind of the backstage holding area where the lynx was actually chilling over there. I think there's actually 2 of them now that I look at it. And yeah, there you have another indoor backstage behind there. So as we continue to follow the path, we can also have a look inside that. And it's very similar to the other one that we already saw. So yeah, that's it for the Zonnegloed. And that concludes all the Eurasian lynx habitats that I've seen. And now we're moving on to the Canadian lynx over here at the Zoo of Brno. And we got a very similar enclosure to this as we saw for all the other lynxes. It's just a nice bit of forest with a mesh and some anti-climbing overhang and some anti-climbing on the trees as well. But it's a nice sloping up enclosure, lots of space. I didn't see the lynx, but still, it's a pretty good enclosure right there. And then next up at the Zoo of Pilsen, or Plzen, we have actually both the Canadian lynx and the bobcat. And as we're following this nice skiddy path up the hill over here, we got our first look into the enclosure, and we can see they have this log cabin backstage over here, which is pretty cute. And it's also on a hill. You got a nice elevation change throughout this habitat, and the lynx was actually sitting right over here. I'm not sure if this is the lynx or the bobcat. I honestly can't really tell them apart personally. But yeah, as we keep following the path, we'll meet up with the main path and eventually follow that up to this viewing area over here, which looks onto the enclosures from this side, as you can see. And we can see another lynx sitting over there underneath the tree, kind of being a little bit sleepy by the looks of it. There is also kind of a log cabin type viewing area over here, from which you can see the backstage of the lynx, which is just a dark room. So yeah, that's it for Pilsen. And that's basically it for the Canadian lynxes. Now we just have a couple more bobcat habitats to look at. Starting over here with my favorite at Burgers Zoo, we are in Burgers Desert, which is a desert building supposed to mimic the Sonora Desert or the Mojave Desert, and that also included the Lynx over here. And this is what their enclosure used to look like. It's not super big, but it's really nicely shaped into this environment over here. This was the favorite spot of the Lynx back in the day, and a really cool feature here is the water flowing down in between the path. I am speaking in past tense because sadly the Lynx passed away and they weren't able to get a replacement for this, so nowadays this is a tree porcupine enclosure at the moment. But yeah, over here there was a cool glass view like through a crack in the rocks to this spot that really was one of the favorite spots of the Lynx. You could pretty often find one sleeping there or sitting there, so that was always really fun. And right beside that viewing area was also another crack in the rocks over here, which looked out into the backstage, but it was kind of hard to film that. So yeah, it's a shame they don't have the bobcat anymore, but that's just the risk you run with when you have a very specifically themed area like that. Anyway, next up at Faunapark Flakkee over here, we've got another bobcat enclosure, the only one remaining in the Netherlands, and it's a pretty simple enclosure in the same style that the rest of the zoo is built in, this kind of homemade feeling. A couple of years ago they actually had some baby bobcat, which you can see over there sitting in the backstage, so they did have some success with offspring here, which is pretty cool, and the babies were very cute, as you can see. And then there is this second enclosure for them as well. They've got two separate yards with sharing the backstage, and over here in the barrel you can also see a bobcat sleeping over there, which is just really cute. This one also eventually did get up, and he definitely had some bed hair, as you can see with his ears. But yeah, it's a nice enclosure. They got some things to climb around in. It could be bigger, but it's a small zoo, so it's also kind of understandable, I guess. Then lastly we have the AllwetterZoo Münster, where the bobcat were in these enclosures over here, which the windows were very fogged up, so I actually had to wipe them off to be able to see inside. But you can see it's a decent enclosure, some nice greenery inside. They've got multiple viewing areas into it, and as we go around there's also more to it as well. I think these are separate enclosures, just like we saw before. But yeah, I like this viewing area with the birch wood around it. That's pretty cool stuff. There's some nice log climbing frames, but yeah, it is all a little bit crammed, especially for a bigger zoo like this. But yeah, you do get some nice views of the bobcats if you so wish. And I especially like this wall over here, which is a nice, like, yeah, I don't know, the birch wood and stuff, it's cool, but it's nothing too spectacular at the same time. So yeah, I don't know, that's it for the AllwetterZoo Münster. Those are all the bobcat habitats I've seen. Those are all the lynx habitats I've seen. I know there's other types of lynx, like the Iberian lynx, which I would love to see someday, but I haven't been to any zoos that keep them, so maybe another time. But yeah, that's gonna be it for me today. Hope you enjoyed, hope you got some lynx inspiration. Sorry if I fumbled a bit more over my words than I usually do. I am still a little bit sick. I have been sick all of last week, so that kind of sucks, but I'll manage, I'll survive, as long as I can go on my zoo trip, which I hopefully will be on when this video comes out. I'm going on a miniature zoo trip, just a long weekend trip to Stuttgart, so you might have an idea what the next video is going to be. It's going to be just one habitat, but a very special one, so hope you look forward to that, and I'll see you there. Bye bye!